Okay. Now, do parents have the right to keep their children ignorant of facts like these about the world's religions? I don't think so. And I think just knowing all of these facts, and a lot more that they would get, not in 5 minutes, but over, you know, little dribbles and dribbles in their curricula over their school years, this would be a good thing for everybody. I want to know if Dinesh thinks no, what is he afraid of? Is it the truth, maybe? These are just uncontroversial facts about the world's religions. I think everybody should know them. Now here's the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Here's some interesting facts about it. It started off as a church. Then it became a mosque, and now it's a museum. Isn't that interesting? Who knows what might happen next? It's hard to say. Here's the Vatican. Maybe in the life of your children or your grandchildren it will become the European Museum of Roman Catholicism. Maybe Mecca will become Disney's Magic Kingdom of Allah. Who knows? The thing about religions is they're changing all the time. They are changing constantly. They've changed more in the last 200 years than they changed in the last 2,000 years. And they'll probably change in the next 20 years as much as they've changed in the last 200. And that's why it's important that everybody know about religions. So, and I don't know if Dinesh wants to disagree with this, but I think it's pretty clear that religions are human inventions. You've just seen quite a wonderful variety of odds and ends of religions. Those are human inventions. Now, they're not like the telephone, you know, not Alexander Graham Bell. It's more the way music or language are inventions. They're human productions, but they have an evolutionary history. Religions have evolved over thousands of years. In fact, there have been uncounted tens of thousands of religions that have sprung up over the last 2,000 or 3,000 years. Religions start up so fast that websites can't keep up with the new ones. Most of them have a half-life of a few weeks. A few last a generation or two. Some of them, only a few, you saw them on the initial list, last for even several thousand years. Even for several thousand years. But not in their original form. They've evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved over that time. Here's Gustav Klimt's wonderful painting of the Tree of Life. And I thought I'd just pause. How am I doing for time?
You have 10 minutes.
Oh, good. To give a secular vision of how wonderful all of this is, and think about the Tree of Life. This is not a scientific diagram. This is an artistic diagram. Every plant, animal, bacterium, fish, bird, all of these things have evolved, descended from unicellular organisms that first appeared on this planet over 3 billion years ago. Not only the organisms, but the coral atolls and the beaver dams and the spider webs and the cities and the canals and the churches and the cathedrals and the forts and the bridges. All of these things are fruits on the Tree of Life. And over that period of time, they have become excellent, beautifully designed, sometimes with a lot of human intervention, sometimes not. They have all evolved, and it's all just wonderful. It is fantastic. I look around, and I am so glad to be alive. This world is so full of just plain wonderful stuff. And from a sunset to a musical performance. And I wish there was somebody to whom I could properly express my gratitude for all of this wonderful stuff. But there isn't. There's nobody the appropriate recipient of my thank you. So what I do instead is I just thank goodness. The very stuff that I'm just marveling at. There is all this goodness, and it's not just good bridges, good wings, good eyes, good tools. It's morally good systems of law. There is moral goodness in addition to engineering goodness, in addition to the goodness of of a good baseball player or a good antelope, there is the goodness of human morality. And all of these things evolved. Where did it come from? It bubbled up from below. Now, this is a hard idea for a lot of people to understand. This is a page from a creationist pamphlet. I love this. I got this years ago. Do you know any builder that didn't have any building that didn't have a builder? Yes, no. Do you know of any painting that didn't have a painter? Yes, no. Do you know of any car that didn't have a maker? Yes, no. If you answered yes for any of the above, give details. Take that, you evolutionist, you. This piece of propaganda is wonderfully, it wears its heart on its sleeve. It finds the whole idea that there could be anything, any examples. It's just so laughable as to be a joke. And then along came Darwin, and he showed exactly that it wasn't a joke at all. Well, Darwin's great idea was written about just a few years later by Robert Beverly Mackenzie. And I love this quote, so bear with me. In the theory with which we have to deal, absolute ignorance is the artificer, so that we may enunciate as the fundamental principle of the whole system that in order to make a perfect and beautiful machine, it is not requisite to know how to make it. The caps are in the original. This proposition will be found on careful examination to express in condensed form the essential purport of the theory, and to express in a few words all Mr. Darwin's meaning, who by a strange inversion of reasoning seems to think absolute ignorance fully qualified to take the place of absolute wisdom in the achievement of creative skill. Yeah, exactly right. And it is a strange inversion of reasoning. Some people just don't get it. They just can't get it. Many very distinguished thinkers just can't get it. Here's Paul Davies, a physicist, writing in '92. He says, the human mind can be no trivial detail, no minor byproduct of mindless, purposeless forces. Well, why would something that was a byproduct of mindless, purposeless forces have to be trivial? Why couldn't it be important? It's because Davies unconsciously, I think, adheres to what I will call the trickle-down theory of goodness. Nothing can be good unless there's something much better on high that is its source. But there's just no reason to believe that. It makes sense of our past. We never saw a shoe make a cobbler. We never saw an arrow make a Fletcher. We're in Fletcher school. Fletchers were people that made arrows. So it looks like it always takes a big, fancy, wonderful thing to make a less thing. And some people just don't get it. One of the people who doesn't is Dinesh in his book. He just articulates the trickle-down theory as if it was just obvious. You just don't get the point. Now, finally, let's talk about God. It used to be people really did believe that God existed, and by God they meant a very specific, concrete, identifiable type of God. Now, how many of you believe that Mount Everest exists? Good. How many of you can pick Mount Everest from these 4 pictures? I thought not. Yeah, we've got 1 or 2 people. Yeah, it's amazing. You can know that Mount Everest exists and not be able to pick it out. That's okay. So maybe something like that is going on with God. But in fact, I think what we see is an evolution of the concept of God. It starts off like Mount Everest. It's a really very grand and concrete, it's Yahweh, who's basically modeled on a warlord, a triumphant, militaristic, jealous, demanding leader. And then this is gradually turned into the ground of all being. What's that? Well, it's not an agent, doesn't have arms and legs, doesn't speak, doesn't listen. It's wonderful, but it has been pretty well, has shed most of its features.